Ugh. I had my worst day ever in the shop. I don't even know how this is statistically possible, but nearly every tool that I used broke. Some things were my fault, some things were not. This was supposed to be a very simple, inexpensive, one-day project, but it turned out to be very costly. This is the story of my worst day ever in the shop. Let's have some fun. Today we're gonna make coffee mugs that's food safe with and without a lathe. I wanted to use a food safe epoxy on the inside of the coffee mug, but it turns out it's a little hard to find epoxy that's food safe also at 200 plus degrees. Instead of messing with any of that, I got these whiskey glass inserts. These are stainless steel. And then also it's a little bit bigger, but it is a Yeti mug and it's got a lid. So if you wanted a lid for your coffee cup, this would be great. And then it's a knockoff of the Yeti, a little bit cheaper if you want to save yourself a few bucks. Ideally, I would love to have wood that's 4 inches thick for this, but I don't. I'm going to use what I have. So I'm going to take this over to the miter saw, chop this into a bunch of pieces, laminate it, and glue them together to get the thickness that I need. We're like a minute into the video, and I'm already going to pivot because I had this aha moment. The plan was to take a bunch of these boards, stack them, and I knew that I was going to see these lines, but what if I did it this way? And then the end grain was at the top and the bottom. So all along here, we got nice straight lines. For the hickory one, I do think I'm gonna have the grain going horizontal and then use the sapwood as an accent for the lip. I think that will look cool. So we'll have a couple to play with. You can never have enough woodworkers telling you can never have enough clamps. Now that these are dry, I need to get some flat surfaces to work with. So I drew a line on here and now cutting them out on the bandsaw. On the walnut one, I cut a straight line on the bandsaw, and then on the hickory one, I ran through the joiner, and then I decided, hey, what would happen if I ran the end grain of the walnut on the joiner? I've never run end grain on a joiner. Turns out it is perfectly fine when you have a helical head, super smooth, except one of my teeth broke and is missing. The screw is still in there, but the tooth, insert, maybe it's called an insert, it's just missing. And the screw, since the screw's still in there, the screw head was sticking up and actually burnt a groove in there. I've never had that happen before. It was a roller coaster of emotion. I was like, sweet, you can run end grain on a joiner. It works perfectly fine if you have a helical head. Not so sweet that that insert is missing. Luckily, it didn't fly off and hit me in the face. I have no idea where it's at. It's just missing. It's not there. It's just missing. So, it's not gonna slow us down. Moving on. I'm just winging it. I'm just kind of figuring things out as I go. So I have the tops of all the mugs cut here. So now I just need to draw a parallel line for the bottom and cut what's going to be the height. I think a couple of these I'm going to put on the lathe. So I want to give myself some extra room so I can screw this in and chuck it up. Also, I'm working within the constraints of my little bandsaw here. The cutting capacity on it is 4 1/4, which this barely fits in there. This is the Rikon 10305. Absolutely no affiliation with Rikon. I've never talked to them ever. And I bought this with my own money that I earned by selling drugs. And I really cannot recommend this bandsaw enough. It's small, it's light. I can move it to the bench if I need to. It's got a nice cutting capacity. It's my second favorite tool in the shop. That's 4 3/4 inches of hard ass hickory on this little guy. This thing is a beast. Recommended. These two we're gonna cut out on the drill press. These two we're gonna cut out on the lathe. For the lathe, I need a sacrificial piece that I can glue onto the bottoms of each one. I'm so conflicted. I don't know whether to use solid walnut for the sacrificial piece or 3/4 inch Baltic birch. Like, Baltic birch has come up in price so much recently that it's actually worth more than my walnut. I got lucky and I found a Forstner bit that is the exact diameter of the outside shape of this whiskey glass. So we're gonna chuck that up in the drill press and remove all of that material. I don't want to drill this out right in the middle because in a later step, we're going to cut the outside shape in and I need room for the handle. Because that bit is so big, slowing the drill press down is going to have a lot of torque. So I've got the blank mounted in some hand screw clamps and I've got that attached to my table. So it is a hands-free operation. It came out really good. Nice and slow. We were like 400 RPM. Probably could go even slower. Bit never got hot and it cut great. That was the cheapest 3-inch Forstner bit I found on Amazon. I figured I'm not gonna use it very much. Might as well get the cheap one, and it cut fantastic. Something is definitely up with my chuck. Like tons of visible run out. I'm not sure why. Hopefully it's just the chuck and not the drill press. And where the other one fit really tight, this one got way worse. And we've got to fill some gaps with epoxy. Pretty disappointing. I'm not sure what I did to screw up my chuck. Sad days. You know what? There's a lot to be sad about. This ain't no big deal. Took it out, put it back in, and then still not spinning true. Turns out it's the chuck and not the drill press, thank goodness. Because I had another one that I normally use on the lathe, and I put that in there and it spins true. So I feel a lot better that it is not the drill press and it is this chuck. I'm not sure what happened. You know what this means? This means I get to buy a new chuck and I am gonna get a keyless chuck because keys are dumb. I cut my finger making knives, and when I was tightening this chuck, my finger got pinched between the little gears right there, right on that cut, and it hurt so bad. I cried like an infant. It hurt so bad. So, it is time for a keyless chuck. Not right now, we gotta finish. We gotta do the... Over here at the lathe, I got this chucked up. It is off center, so it's gonna be a little wobbly, but that off center is to give me room for a handle. Now we're gonna use the same Forstner bit to hog away most of the material, but it's not going to be big enough for this Yeti mug. So we'll come back with traditional lathe tools and finish it off. So the one where we had the runout problem and that fits a little bit too loose, we're actually going to use this for the Yeti knockoff that is a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna glue a sacrificial bottom onto this, chuck this up on the lathe, turn that a little bit bigger until this falls in, and then this one can go on the final one that we haven't used yet, and then we'll have 4 nice tight fits. Because we had to course correct, this insert wasn't made for this blank, so I actually had to make it a little bit taller, so I glued on a piece of cherry and then cut this out at the lathe. I'm mixing up some epoxy here. I think I'm going to epoxy these in place now before cutting the outside shape, because some of them I have to kind of pound in, and I want to do that while the walls are still nice and thick. That is so incredibly satisfying. We're now here at the table saw, and I'm going to use the table saw to remove the sacrificial bottom that I used on the lathe. This will take 2 passes because my blade just ain't tall enough, so I'm going to run it through, flip it over, run it through again. And I got to do the same with the Yeti one. And I need to make sure that this height fits within the constraints of our little bandsaw, that little beast of a bandsaw. Beast saw. It is now called the beast saw. Let me tell you what just happened. So, I didn't measure the height of the insert, the coffee mug, before gluing it in there. And so what I did was I measured the depth here and then just added a little bit more to the fence. But apparently I didn't add enough. And because I have a SawStop, it triggered the safety mechanism, which the brake is now slammed up against my blade, and I got to change the brake. And sometimes you actually have to change the blade too, because it'll ruin the teeth. So that was a good lesson learned. I'm gonna change the brake, gonna examine the blade, and I'm just going to move on with my day and call it a loss. Luckily, I do keep extra brakes here in case something like this happens. Things like this happen. This is a real moment. This is right now what we are having, what you and I are having, this is a real moment. And my brother is here, he's helping out today, and I was just telling him, there he is. I was just telling him, you know what? I'm not gonna get mad anymore in the shop. When something goes wrong, when the drill press is not working right, or when a project takes longer, I'm not gonna get mad anymore. And I'm just gonna go with the flow. So here I am, not being mad, just going with the flow. Not mad at all. I mean, not even a little bit. We need to talk. I started off with 4. We're down to 2. The whiskey glass ones that we use for the inserts, that's what they look like, right? The whiskey glass inserts, they're 1/8 of an inch thick. I didn't realize that they were double walled and that the bottom is actually a lot thicker than 1/8 inch. So I was cutting off the bottom of this one here at the table saw before heading to the bandsaw, and I did it again. I did it again. Look at that. This time, just in case I turned off the SawStop brake. And thank goodness, because I don't have an extra brake. And we're down to 2. We are down to 2. If you are doing this at home, please measure your inserts before gluing them in place. That way you know how much room you have to work. I make mistakes, so you don't have to. Son of a... Woo! We did it! We did it! Try not to put my face into the saw blade. We did it! We got one! We got our outside dimension, and then I'm just gonna use a real coffee mug to kind of rough out how big to make the handle. And we broke a blade. At the end of the video, we're gonna tally up how much all this is costing me. I'm still having a good day. Grandma always said, a bad day in the shop is better than a good day at work. I don't know what that means. We're having a bad day. We broke a carbide insert on the joiner, we've got a bad chuck for the drill press, we lost a SawStop brake, and we ruined a table saw blade, we broke a bandsaw blade, and we ruined 2 of the coffee inserts. I'm gonna call it quits. We're gonna add up all the cost of this project here at the end of the video. I need a break, so I'm gonna tell you about Squarespace. This is gonna be a good break. Maybe you're better than me. Maybe you don't break all of your equipment. You're a maker, you're a woodworker, you're a metal worker, you're a crafter, you're an artist. By the way, I'm being really safe. I'm driving 10 miles an hour. There's no traffic on this road, and I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. But it is 2022. You need a website. You need a place to show off your work. Maybe you want to sell some of your work. Squarespace is the perfect place to do so. Let's say you want a password protected site. You can do that with Squarespace. Let's say you want to sell the things you make. You can do that with Squarespace. You can also have digital downloads like plans or music or whatever you want, and sell merch through your Squarespace site. Another cool feature about Squarespace is you can bring in all your social media feeds, so you have one central place for all of your stuff. You can change up your theme or your colors easily through the interface. You don't need to know about code, cloud, JavaScript, or any of that. It's super easy to use. We're on our way to the store now to go get some replacement blades, hit the reset button, and figure out what's going on. Sometimes you just gotta hit the reset button. I've been using Squarespace for years. In fact, I used to be a web developer. I could make my own website from scratch if I wanted to, but I prefer to use Squarespace because it just makes my life easier. Visit squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, visit squarespace.com/makesomething for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. We're here. I gotta go get some replacement blades. I have hundreds of projects between my two YouTube channels, and this is the first time I've ever had to call it quits. I think the universe was just trying to tell me something, and maybe I quit before I had a chance to hurt myself. We're gonna add up all the costs of this inexpensive project here in a second. 2 of these blanks are perfectly fine, and 2 of them have the messed up inserts. I did offer these blanks to my Patreon members, so they are going to finish them up for me. So in a couple of months, I can come back to this project, show off the work for my Patreon members, and reattempt this using some of the lessons that I learned today. Turns out you can't buy just one cutter for the joiner. You have to buy a pack of 10, $99.99. Keyless chuck, $64.99. SawStop brake, $89. Forest Woodworker 2 table saw blade, $179.99. Bandsaw blade, $27.99. Whiskey glass set, $14.99. Yeti Rambler, $20. Yeti knockoff, $12.99. Total, $509.94.